Well, shalom, everyone. Welcome to this news update on Four Corners News Network. Breaking news that took place on Friday that in Iran, in Natanz, there was a rocket blast on a nuclear producing centrifuges, producing that uranium and nuclear grade material. They say for nuclear power, but it's really in a sense for making nuclear bombs so that they can be even more of a terrorist in the area. But let me just say, I'm taking this from a couple of news sources. Breaking Israel News, and this is an article by Yoav Lamor on July 9th, 2020. And then he says it's a blast damaged a factory where advanced centrifuges were being tested. There's two reports, so that's one report. And then the second report was that it was claimed that a cyber attack triggered the blaze. But the New York Times actually went a step further and said that the incident was a result of an explosive device planted at the site. Now, those are all interesting thoughts, and those are all interesting theories of what happened. No one knows who did it. No one knows who did it, who could do it. Because if it was the latter, where the incident was a result of an explosive device that was planted in that facility. Now, remember, these facilities are not just, like Boston with buildings or any city that has buildings that are above the ground. These are deep, deep, deep within the ground. I remember I did a job for AT&T. And I had to go around all of Massachusetts and go to all their sites that they housed all their equipment and do some things that I'm not going to go into what I had to do, but these were all bunkers. These were all places that you had to have high security to get in there, and when you get in there, you're going deep into the ground, and that's where so that it could withstand an attack. I'm not sure if it was a nuclear attack that it could stand, or just the conventional bombs that it could stand. I think it was probably just conventional, but and that's what this building was. It was down deep in the ground. So in order to bomb that, and in order to affect it, somebody had to go in there. Who has the intelligence to do that? That's just an interesting. And this was the third major explosion and incident that took place in the last 3 weeks. There was this one, and then two others in other places. So, I think Israel was asked if they were involved in it, and they were just kind of like, maybe, maybe not type of thing. Not even, they didn't even say maybe. They just said, they just kind of looked and said, I don't think so. I don't think so. But who could have done this? Who could have done this? It was either an inside job or there was some things. But it's shaking Iran, which is pretty shaky right now anyway. There's a lot of sanctions on them. Their currency is in a free fall. Their economy is totally debunked. Their unemployment rate is probably in the 50% range or something like that. It's just incredible what's happening there, and yet they're still obstinate. They're still not wanting to become part of the family of nations, if you will, and play nicely in the sandbox. They just want to be. They keep on making threats against Israel. They keep on making threats against the United States. They call us the big Satan. They call Israel the little Satan. And so now, Jamie, I want to ask you just this question. Do you think that this was inside, or do you think this was something that more than likely could have been something that Israel orchestrated? Don't forget, 10 years, I think it was 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago, 2010, they did that in the same plant that just got bombed and which blew up. They had that worm. Remember that worm that in the computers? And Iran did not know it for about a year, almost a year, that it took place, 2009 to 2010, and then somebody, and I think it was somebody in the Obama administration, I believe, or somebody tipped it off, and then they found it and got rid of it. But that created a lot of havoc in their equipment for making this, to slow them down. So what do you think?
Well, I personally think that there's Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying ever since the beginning of this, that I can remember going back years and years, that we had to stop Israel in order for them to remain safe, had to stop this nuclear weapon being made through the Iranians. If they had that nuclear weapon, that was going to be detrimental to Israel. Israel would not survive. So they have used every bit of the resources that they have to prevent this from happening. I think it was back in 1980 when they flew the bomber in and blew up some of their facilities under the radar, and so they've been fighting this for a long time. And I think that the U.S., with having the resources of the United States and having President Trump being able to support that they definitely had the ability to do something like this. Whether they did it, I don't know. Whether they didn't do it, I don't know. I don't know the real answer to that. We know from past history that they have done it. They've been able to do it with they got one of the best Secret Service operations in the world. And they've been able to overcome a lot of situations using that intel that they have been able to get. So, as far as I can see, I would say I would venture, if I was a betting man in Vegas, I would put my odds on Israel being involved.
I would totally agree with that. I mean, they are so stealth in their intelligence. And they've done things for such a small country. I mean, you can just see the hand of the Father upon that country, upon the leadership, and I understand they're not, a lot of the leadership is not, I think they're coming around maybe, but they may or may not be Torah observant, but the Father has his hand on that piece of land and the protection, and his promises are true. I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. And Iran has obviously been cursing that state of Israel for a long time. And Persia is trying to rise up its ugly head. So, AviGayle.
No, and I think that I love that Defenders of Israel, the IDF. And when I hear that, that to me is it's like Pincus. It's like Pincus, and having a passion to defend Israel, to be ardent to defend Israel. Now, I'm going to say this. It's a requirement. It's not like every single one that's an IDF soldier is chomping at the bit, and has that ardent, but they know it's required of them, to everybody to serve in the IDF, male and female, when they turn a certain age. I think it's 18. But what I love about it is that because that type of attitude of defending Israel manifests, the Father's with them. The Father is definitely working with them. Yahweh Zavaot is working with them, doing battle on their behalf, because anybody can do any research they want to find out some of the areas that there were battles that were won, and it had to be supernatural. It had to be supernatural. And we've heard testimony upon testimony. We've actually met people who were in some of the wars, and I love the attitude. I love the attitude of the people that go to Israel because they have a passion for Israel. And I'm talking now, all of us, when we go to Israel, we have a passion for Israel. Not everybody goes with the right attitude. They have preconceived ideas. But we know some people that grew up in Massachusetts, and they had children. And their children are in Israel right now. They're in Israel. They're in, they are studying in Israel. And some of them, even from Massachusetts, have joined the IDF. So there's that seed from Pincus that is, and they do it willingly. They want to do it. I mean, it's not like they're born there and it's required of them to be born there. They are enlisting in the IDF. So why am I saying all this? And there's also the reserve. Oh my goodness, if there's a war that breaks out, there are people, men and women, who keep their bodies in tune so that they can fight if there's a necessity for them to come in for a reserve situation. I mean, they are ready to boots to the ground, and they're ready to defend Israel. So the Father's working in and through Israel, the people who love Israel, the people who aren't quite there, the people that are doing it for whatever reason. But here's something that put my mind at ease concerning all of this. The sovereign of esteem is going to work through the hearts of people concerning Israel. If you're on the side of Israel, if you are truly on the side of Israel, and you have if your main goal is to bring Israel to that place where the Torah is the constitution of Israel, because right now it's not. The Torah is not the constitution. There are rabbis there that, are very serious about it. There are definitely rabbis there who are on some of the settlements that are very serious about it, and they're still working. But the bottom line is this. Not everybody that's in Israel right now that's living there has a Torah passion, the spirit of the Torah passion. They don't. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. And I'm sure Jamie knows some people too. They're living there, but they don't have a Torah passion. But the Father is bringing that around. The Father is those who are diligently seeking are becoming more and more connected and saying to Judah, you don't own the Torah. You don't own it. It's ours too. But you've had a hold of this Torah longer than us. You've been commissioned to do it, which embraces the warfare.
Yes.
It's part of that understanding, So, but it embraces defending Israel. So the bottom line is the Father is doing a work in all of our lives, and He's the one that is going to bring us together as one, Echad. He's doing it in all of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I think this kind of a situation here, it always kind of, to me, that creates like a tension. It's like when you hear these kinds of things, you're like, you brace yourself. But then what do you do? What you should do is praise the Most High, fall on your face, and say, your will be done. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So it's exciring.
It is. One thing you said to me, did you want to?
No, I was just saying,
okay.
Bill. Bill
Hamill's
here.
I know Bill. I really am getting to appreciate Bill.
I know he volunteered.
Look at this. He spent a month there last year and volunteered with the IDF. It was an experience of a lifetime.
Amen, Bill. That is awesome.
Bill, that is terrific.
Really awesome.
That is awesome.
I'm telling you.
I saw one of the training camps. I saw people that were brought out. They once showed some kind of a.
Well, yeah. Let me just. Cause I want to say something here, because here's a contrast of Israel and the United States. Because we're talking about the IDF, and as you mentioned, AviGayle, the IDF is not a volunteer group. You can volunteer for it, but it's required
Of those who live
of
there.
those that live there. 18 to I think it's 18 to 20 for 2 years for women, and 3 years for men, and then they're all still are in the reserves even when they get out of the army itself, and they have to go through like basic training or whatever like they do with the National Guard here. But again, it's all part of it. So I was just kind of thinking, so here you have the IDF, and they're there they learn through their youth all up. I'm sure they get taught really strong history about Israel and about how they became a state in 1948, and they will probably go through the Holocaust and all the different things that brought them to the point where they are today. Even though it's 70 some odd years later after they became a state, they're there to protect the land. They understand the enemy's motives. They understand what the love of the land and the liberties mean to them, and the Torah. And whether they know that or not, it's based on the Torah. They love the land, but you can't. So you have this strong constitution within each one of them. And when we've been there, we that's one of the things we love to do. We love to talk to the people. We don't really like to go on tours. We're not really, we'll go on a tour, but the tour will be something different than you'd ever experienced in your life. It's not going to buildings, it'll go through some things like that, but it's connecting with the people and the land. Yes. And we love talking to the youth and hearing their thoughts and their and how they process information, and because they live in with 22 Arab nations surrounding them, a little piece of land that's like the size of New Jersey, and then I contrast that with what's happening today in this America, in this country, America, and the service is a volunteer army, not required. So most people do never go into the army. Probably it would be a good thing for that to happen. That even for a 2-year stint or a 3-year stint, to get to understand what protecting this country means and what the liberties mean. The youth of this day, they don't learn the history of the United States, the true history. They get all this liberal, progressive, wacko type of history. They believe, and then they start, when they get into college, they start to believe those lies of the college professors. Then they believe the lies of the anti-American groups that are permanent, that permeate the land. And then whether they are silent or active, it just spreads like a disease. And that's why you see today, these protests. It's not about George Floyd. It's not about George Floyd. It should be, but it's not about George Floyd. It started that way, and then the anarchists come in, and then they start ripping down America, ripping down the police, ripping down the military, ripping down the border police, ripping down the ICE agents, ripping down structure. Like Ilhan Omar, that came from that. In Somalia, wants it to be that way here. Why did she come here? She came here as a younger person, I think, and this country brought her out of that disaster, and she wants to create that disaster here. So we need to have voices that raise up. Unfortunately, we the youth, and I heard, and this was very sad. Lawrence, I can't remember his,
from Texas.
Yeah, the Lawrence Jones.
Yes.
From Texas. He was very, very involved in the campus
reporting. He would report.
Yeah, he did a lot of campus reporting with Charlie Kirk and Candace. Yes, Candace Owen. And they were, in the college campuses, and he said, which really hurt me. He said he believes the college campuses are gone. I don't know if I'd go that far yet, but because of these professors from the 60s that are teaching these kids and their families and their children now teaching these kids. You see the progressive lies that are happening. We need to make a stand. We need to come up strong and not be silent. I saw on the news today that some guy in Ohio had 19,000 square feet of grass, and he's renting in a neighborhood, and he put a big giant Trump 2020 logo on his grass. He painted it. It said it took him 100 hours to do, and he did it, and his neighbors love it. You know, maybe not all the neighbors, but most of them really they were there with him. But he, you know, again, somebody speaking up, somebody, you know, making a stand. And I'm not even talking about just President Trump. I'm talking about fighting the good fight. That we don't want to have our liberties taken away. That couple in St. Louis that was protecting their home and themselves when that mob came through, and he had an AR-15 rifle, and the feds, or I don't know if it was the feds, but the state St. Louis police went in and confiscated their legally owned and obtained gun. They have a permit. They have the castle law there, which you have a right to protect your home. And yet this attorney general who is running for re-election, who is a liberal, overstepped her bounds and had the police take that gun away. Now what's going to happen to that couple when that mob comes back? So, all right, that was my little rant. Any other last thoughts, Jamie?
Well, I just want to add the IDF. I think is one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to, you know, those people in Israel. They have to go into the IDF. You know, here in the United States, I think it's less than 7% are in the military. I mean, you know, military service. It's a very small percentage. And when they go through the IDF, when they go, they be trained, they get history, they understand what it meant for them to, you know, what they finish up all their stuff at Masada down at the Dead Sea. They have a great celebration talking about the heritage and the attitude of the Israeli people wanting to keep and preserve God and His Word in that land. And you know, it's amazing because those people go into the military. When they come out, many of them become great businessmen. They go to college. They're ready to really make a difference because they've seen enough through the military that they understand. Really, I have to make a difference. I'm young. I got to change things, and I can do it now. And they come out of there on fire. I got a friend who has his sons have their children. I know two of his sons have had their children go through the IDF. One of them has a couple of them that have finished the IDF, which you guys hear to. That's Boaz Michael, the guy that runs First Fruits. His kids have been through the IDF, and then also his brother. Also, Scott has had one or two, maybe two, go through the IDF. But they, just the remarkable difference in their attitude as they come out, and it just changes things so magnificently. So we have to see something. They're talking about maybe instituting the draft in our country again. But before we ever get that far, we've got to do something about our educational system, and we also got to really do something dramatically about what's going on in our governments. I mean, all the way through our governments, from our local governments to the top, they've been infiltrated by this liberal and this communist attitude that I remember so clearly when I was younger. I think it was 1960. It was 65, 66 was when Khrushchev was at the UN, and he had brought his shoe in his briefcase, and he started pounding on the table and made a big deal with his shoe. But what he was saying was, we will destroy America with never firing a shot. because we will, because of your, basically all of our greeds and all of America's wants, they will attack it through, through the educational system, the entertainment, sports system, through all the systems that we have for pleasure. They would institute and take them over through liberal thinking, in which they have done a great job of it since then. And it's amazing to see what we got going on. It's amazing to see what's happening right now in America. And I've got grandchildren. I'm sure a lot of us out there do, and we've got to see something change now if we're going to see America be America will not be America if we don't make this election different. If we don't get rid of the people that are in there, it's not going to be the same America next year. It will not be.
Amen to that. Amen to that. You have a final comment?
Yeah, because I think the whole thing boils down to, again,
Sorry.
the whole thing boils down to lawlessness, because number one, I am in full persuasion that people that come out of high school should go into the service rather than go into college. I believe that, that to me is an amazing character development. It's a wake-up call to a lot of things. And I mean, I've heard of so many people, and I knew them personally, that had discipline problems as young children. And the parents said, you need to go into the service and you need to learn how to submit. You need to learn discipline. And they did, and they came out amazing. And I knew them personally. Actually, they spent time in our home. We watched them, and they just, But to me, I think that the problem is, it's not a problem. It's a good thing to have freedom of speech. That's a very important aspect of this country, the land of the free. But unfortunately, it's not guarded by the Torah. You take the Bible, you take the Word of God away from the influence of parents having influence over their children, and everybody begins to bow down to movies and fantasy and Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Tinkerbell and whomever else, as opposed to the King. And we've unfortunately, it's I call it running amok. It's run amok. And everybody's in the mud up to their hips because they are sinking and sinking and sinking. And it's like quicksand, and and Jamie, you're right. If people don't wake up, and really see the disaster of what's taking place, and it really is going to take a spiritual awakening. It's not an intellectual awakening. There's a lot of people that are extremely intellectual. There's nothing wrong with their mind. The Father has given them a good mind, but spiritually they choose not to yield to the spirit of the Torah. They choose lawlessness. They're not disciplined, and the people have been serving money as opposed to serving the King. And Yeshua said it: you can't serve two gods. You're going to love the one and hate the other, and hate the one and love the other. So Israel has done the right thing, because even Israel deals, because we've talked to a lot of IDF. I make it a point to have conversations with the IDF. I thank them for serving. I tell them I pray for them every day. And I do. That's not just lip service. I pray for our servicemen every day. But I talk to them, and I can tell that they, like any young adult, when you're that age, you'd rather be doing anything than having to be disciplined. That's when you start feeling your, oats, if you want to say. And but yet they know that it's a requirement. That's the problem. We are not encouraging discipline in this nation. We're not encouraging discipline. We have people that have been possessed with a spirit of darkness, and they're teaching our children in universities. I wouldn't want my child to go to a college. I would not want my child to go to a college. I would prefer that my child went into the service if I had it to do over again. And I had some battles with some of the professors that were teaching Brian. I did. I have to, I just said, what are you teaching? This is America. What are you teaching? And so I've had to, roll up my sleeves. And so the mind is being indoctrinated because the mind, it starts in your thinking process. So we personally have to take responsibility. And I love the homeschooling concept. You can look at all the people during quarantine. I hear these mothers saying, I'm not a teacher, and I'm yelling at the television. Yes, you are a teacher. You're the first teacher that your child has. I don't know how to teach. Yes, you do. And there's wonderful curriculum that all of them could be homeschooling. There's curriculum that makes it very easy to teach all the way from preschool all the way up to high school. And so to me, it's a major deception. People are being deceived. Deception. And you know what deception is a result of? Tauralessness. Tauralessness. I'm not going to obey. That's what happened to our father Adam, and Hahava, and our mother Hahava. They were deceived. And what did it cause? It caused a curse.
Amen. Amen. It did. That would be a great conversation to get into at some point about, why do we really need college these days? Now, there may be some reason for it, but most reasons are not. It's usually for some sort of prestige. I went to such and such college. I went to Harvard. I went to Princeton.
They're reading from the tree of the knowledge of good and
evil.
No,
I understand. But I'm thinking that in terms of, wouldn't it be much better to go into the service? And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I know there's things that people can learn, like pilots, how to fly, how to be mechanics on those large planes, and obviously the tanks and the trucks and the vehicles that take place, and a whole host of other things. Cybernetics. Learning all that intricacy and those can then provide great jobs coming out of the service. Wouldn't it be better for them to go into that kind of situation and learn all these other things that they supposedly are learning in college? But one, they get paid for going into the army or going to the services, whatever services they may want to go into, and learn all that stuff, and then come out with, forget about the stinky college degrees, because all these businesses say, you have to have a 4-year college degree, you have to have a master's degree, you have to have this degree, you have to have that degree. 98.6 degrees is just not enough anymore. But it was just something. But I want to get into the tour portion.
Thank you.
Because this is a topic that we could just really exhaust.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.